At Metropole TVKE across all your social media platforms. My name is Simba Elijah Charles Kiaga. Welcome to your official economic review this morning. And we're telling you exactly what it is that you're waking up to in terms of the biggest economic headlines as you start your day. Let me introduce the gentlemen who are going to take us through the next part of our show this morning. We have Moses Nyabila, who's a dairy consultant. Moses, how are you doing, sir?
I'm doing well, Simba. Good to see you.
Happy to have you around. Welcome to Metropole Television. We also have Joash Onsando, who's a public policy analyst and political strategist. Joash, good morning, sir.
Good morning, Simba. How are you?
I'm okay, man. Happy to have you around. Let's begin with you, Moses Nyabila, this morning. This is the introduction. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary now says that the cost of production of milk has dropped by 20% in the last 5 years, driven by a fall in labor and feed prices. He, however, noted with concern that the price of milk per litre remains high at 23 shillings. C.S. Munya, who was speaking at the launch of the report by the Kenya Dairy Board on the cost of production of milk in Kenya, noted that the industry is very profitable and urged investors to take advantage of the existing local and regional markets to fully maximize on the returns. Now, the CS pointed to the 12% annual rise in dairy outputs from the country as an indication that the industry was headed in the right direction. Now, the country's milk output in 2019 was at about 11% of the 49.9 billion litres of milk produced in Africa. He noted, now the industry employs 750,000 people directly and creates 500,000 jobs indirectly in service provision. Let's look at the data that we have this morning from the dairy industry in the country as well. And you can actually say that we're going to start from in terms of the annual retail price for milk, that is for 500 ml, that is packeted, comes all the way from 2015 to 2019. And you can actually say that it has been on an incremental phase. The biggest one we ever saw was in 2018 at 60 shillings, but now we're doing at 56 shillings. That's the data we have for you. Let's cross over to another data set that we have for you this morning. In terms of milk production from 2017 to 2019, one trend is that yes, indeed, it conforms to what the CS is saying, that indeed our levels have been increasing all the way from 2017 to 2019. Good. Moses, yes, that it's good news that the cost of production has been on a falling trajectory since 2020. Fine. But then why do we have this disparity in terms of the cost of production and the eventual price or the cost of the milk?
Well, good questions. Good questions. First of all, I want to say, why we have a lot of issues around the dairy industry is one, it's a very important sector for our industry,
yes,
for our country. It's one of those sectors in which we are leading in the continent. So like what you've said, we produce probably about 11 to 12% of the continent's total 49 or so thousand billion liters of milk per year. So it is important. I think in that statistics, what is missing is that Kenya controls almost 60% of Africa's dairy herd. So you can see the disconnect. As a dairy country, the level of productivity is still a bit lower if you compare to South Africa, for example.
Yes.
So South Africa would probably be 3 times what we are doing in terms of productivity. So in that regard, you can see there's a disconnect there. The other disconnect, I would say, in our industry, good as it is one, it's really supporting a lot of farmers, almost 1.8 million farmers in total, most of them smallholder farmers. But if you look at it from a productivity standpoint, I usually use the pyramid. You know the Egyptian pyramid?
Yes.
It's very good. usually the base of the pyramid is bigger than the top.
Yes.
Now, if the top is where you have productivity and you have industry data, at the bottom you have resources that you employ to build that industry. Then obviously, if the base is big, then you have a problem. So you have a less productive sector. Now, in other parts of the world, what you do, you tilt the pyramid upside down. So at the base, you have the resources, you have the people. At the top, you have the productivity, you have the food that you're producing, and therefore you're building a very productive industry. So on a per farmer basis, you'd say in Kenya, per farmer, probably we are looking at about 10 liters of milk per day. Now, per farmer in Australia is probably 20,000 liters. In South Africa, it's probably 5,000 liters. So you can see where in that place there's a disconnect from the get-go.
Yes.
So what I would say is that we really need to start comparing ourselves with countries that do real dairy. Because again, this has been a dairy industry that's been leading. If you look at the history of this country, from when KCC was founded in 1925, you look at a number of things that have happened in between. Kenya was among the first countries to adopt artificial insemination in the 50s in the world. KCC is among the oldest modern dairy companies in the world. When you look at Tetra Pak, for example, the first country outside of Sweden was Kenya. At some point, it was said, Lord Delamere said he would build a pipeline of milk from Naivasha to Nairobi because the trucks were taking too long.
Yes.
So that tells you how ambitious this industry was. So we've taken it and then divided it into pieces. Now we are back to fighting, to competing with Somalia, India, and all these other countries that emerged 60 years after Kenya's dairy industry was built. So in other words, we've gone so much back that we are now coming from a very deep hole. So it's from that deep hole that we are saying the cost has improved from 2014. It has done this, but somebody will tell you, but Moses, why are you where you are today? So those improvements don't then really matter.
Yes.
As much as they sound very good and exciting. So we come from that perspective. And if you're to look at it again from Kenya Vision 2030, you look at a farmer. Between now, it's 8 years to 2030. Where is the farmer today? With that level of productivity, 3 cows, all that, you realize the farmers will actually, by the time we get to 2030, our farmers will not be in 2030. They will be in 2020, in 1920, in terms of productivity, in terms of how much income and whatnot. 100 years difference. So I think I'll stop there. That's just to give you a perspective.
Yes.
In terms of the retail sector, vis-a-vis the cost of production, I think for the last 3-4 years, the cost of milk at retail has remained almost constant. It oscillates between 60 and 50.
Yes.
Right now it's 50, 500 ml, sometimes 49. If you look at milk from these cooperatives, a lot of the unions that are now processing milk, it's around 45. If you remove, if X factory, it must be around 40. So yes, the cost of milk at retail has remained constant. So again, as consumers, we should actually be grateful to our farmers and the industry that we've kept the cost of milk stable compared to, for example, maize flour and others that have really grown over the last few years. So again, we have to commend the industry and government for a few things that's been done to maintain those things. So cost, again, the cost hasn't gone too high. All those things. Retail has remained fairly stable.
Yes.
But what I've told you is the industry is in a hole. If you are to compare it with real industries or where the industry was many 50 years ago.
Yes.
So we are not where we are supposed to be.
Moses, the sayers says, and I think that's another talking point as well, that this specific industry, and I'm using his words, is very profitable. But you're sitting there and saying, well, if you actually look at exactly where we are, and if you encompass this specific industry back into Vision 2030, then it doesn't add up in terms of the very profitability that CS Munya is speaking about. Where is the disconnect this morning between you and him?
Well, the disconnect, of course, you were speaking in relative terms.
Yes.
Compared to 2014 and where we are today. So definitely the CS is right.
Yes.
The CS is right in many ways. When you look at how much support, how important the industry is to farmers, to whatnot, to government in terms of targets and whatnot, it's critical.
Yes.
But you are a business host in terms of journalists. They always say in business, there's nothing wrong with the bottom line that cannot be fixed by a good top line. So if the top line, for example, if you look at this study, the average, annual revenue farmers get from milk is, I think the highest is like 350,000 shillings.
Yes.
350,000 shillings for 365 days. That's how much per day. Now, it doesn't matter then how efficient you are if your top line is that. Because somebody will say that top line itself is not enough. So why are we even discussing the bottom line? How do you get to a bottom line, a good bottom line, if the top line is terrible? So there is no way then that farmer can be efficient. Because I will tell you, you have 3 cows, you have a whole family taking care of that same 3 cows and whatnot the whole year. How do they go to school? How do they go to hospital? Because all those things have to come from your business. So the issue I had with the study, and probably will come to that,
yes,
is this idea of average farmer who doesn't have a name. And they get 10 people, they put them together, and then they tell you, come up with an average farmer. Now, that average farmer does not have a name. It's not called Simba. So next year, if I come, the average farmer still doesn't have a name. I wouldn't like, anyway, we can get to that. But I would agree with the CS that certain things have gone right. The government is trying its best. This is a poor country in general. So there are many things that the dairy industry is doing that perhaps should be copied by others to get more participation from the population. So in that regard, we are heading somewhere.
Yes.
But in terms of the goal of where we want to go, if you're traveling to New York, and I found you in Thika, the following time I found you in Ruiru, I wouldn't say you are getting near at New York. Even though, yes, statistically, yes, perhaps a kilometer. But then I still see you have an ocean to cross. And if you don't have an aircraft, I would say you will not get there. So then it doesn't matter.
Pretty much. Moses, now let's therefore see exactly what the CS Munya is really trying to introduce here, that the cost of production, is that what we need to address therefore to come out of this hole, Moses? Because it's going to start from somewhere. What do you think we need to, what do you think we need to address? Is it just the cost of production, or there are other pertinent issues that need to be solved first for us to get back to where this industry was?
Well, in the short term, yes, the cost of production.
Could it, and I'm sorry to cut you short, could it come lower than it is now?
Yes, it could. I mean, there are many ways. I mean, a cow eats grass.
Yes.
So therefore, the first place, if you're looking at reducing the cost of production, is what's that grass the cow is eating? What's the quality of that grass? Because remember that you get milk from 2 things, the energy component and the protein component.
Yes.
So it's not just the grass that matters. So you have to reduce the cost of that grass, for example, and then you have to reduce the cost of concentrate. So there are many ways of reducing those, but also using them in the right combination. So it's not just the cost. If you use them in the right combination, you get more milk, because again, because there's a formula to milk. A cow is a factory. It has a formula, just like the way you make Coca-Cola. You mix this, you mix this. If you don't mix them right, you don't get the right product at the end, and therefore your cost will go up. So again, the biggest challenge we have in the industry has been the quality of the feed. So even though you are talking cost, but somebody will tell you if you're feeding rice straws, even if that rice straws you got it at zero, you'd find you feed it to your cow, the cow doesn't give you the milk. So therefore, your labor cost goes up simply because you fed the wrong thing. So cost has to be looked at as a mix. There's the cost of feed, there's the cost of labor. If you change one of them by just trying to, for example, you're being pound, what do you call it? Cents wise, but pound foolish. You end up with a situation where your cost of labor now goes up because your cost of feed went down, but it went down the wrong way. So your productivity went down. So there are ways of looking at that in a more holistic manner. But it's down to the quality of the feed, the content of that feed, and then the price on a per unit basis. I would even say the cost per kilojoule if we are talking energy, or cost per whatever protein measure.
Yes. So
those are things we need to look at. But then I would also look at the overall efficiency of the farm. How many cows are held in a farm, So, and then how many are in milking? So there are many ways of reducing costs that too often is not reflected in our day-to-day formula. So therefore, there's a more fundamental way of looking at it. But I would say, if I found you with 3 cows, I would say from the get-go, your costs will never be right.
Yes.
Because your cost of labor is already way through the roof, even before I start measuring. So yes, so we need to improve on those, but structural, we need also to look at. So short term, you can look at those costs and whatnot, how do you improve them? And then in the long term, you're looking at the structural issues around the industry. And we need to start addressing structural issues.
Pretty much. Just before we came on air, I actually caught you saying that, well, in as much as we're trying to push for the dairy industry in the country, there's a disconnect in the sense that you have these industries that work hand in hand. Let's talk about the dairy and the farming industry or the crop industry, but you are not working together. Is that another area that we also need to sort of solve before we even start talking about the cost of production coming down?
Absolutely. It's a value chain.
Yes.
It's a value chain, and too often we dichotomize the industries too much. We separate them. So, for example, within the agriculture ministry, the livestock sector is different from crop sector, and they sit separately and come up with separate strategies. Now, if you don't bring them together, then you find agronomists who are supposed to help you produce the fodder and forage to feed to your animals, which constitutes 70% of your cost. If they're not in the room when you're discussing cost, then what are you really talking about? So we need the crop sector. The crop sector needs the livestock sector, because remember, the livestock sector in a circular economy, you find fertilizer comes from, you get manure from the livestock sector into and in reality anyway, farmers keep livestock and they keep crops.
Yes.
So if you're not holistic in measuring how the farmers are performing from that standpoint, then you're likely to get it wrong.
Pretty much. Now, Moses, as we come to the end of this conversation this morning, talk to me about the small-scale farmer, which we do know also holds a larger percentage of this industry. When we're talking about the cost of production this morning, do you think that they're well factored in the value chain, or we're talking about the commercial farmers in the country?
Well, I mean, all farmers need to be commercial. There's no question about it.
Yes.
I mean, that is supposed to be the reality. I mean, if you look at what Kenya Dairy Board is saying, dairy is a business. So you need to measure it just like any other business. And scale is definitely an issue. I would tell you, Simba, again, another disconnect that we have in our industry, is that at independence, we got the farms from the departing settlers, and we gave the farms to civil servants. Now, the civil servants hold huge tracts of land, which they cut into pieces whenever they run out of money. The smaller farmers, who are actually the producers of farms, of milk, don't have farms. So you find that you have the cows, you're supposed to be producing for the country, but there's nowhere to produce your fodder and forage. The little farm you have in Kisi, which is like an acre or less than an acre, you're supposed to produce fodder and produce food for your family, and then feed the cow and take your milk to the local island creameries. It's not possible. So again, we're asking smallholder farmers to do things that are impossible, and we put so much responsibility on them to feed the country, but they don't have land. So the land is in the hands of civil servants who sit in Nairobi, who do what we call luxury farming. They send M-Pesa the other way around. M-Pesa never comes from Nairobi, but you're running a 3,000-acre farm. How comes you're not getting money from the farm? So again, there's a disconnect there. So unless we support farmers, and this is where I agree with C.S. Munya. Yes. He said, we are going to get land, farmland from government to begin with. ADC holds almost 2 million acres of land, doing absolutely nothing with it, if you ask me. And we can get into that if we have time. The other one is, so we need to get land from government to support smallholder farmers organized in cooperatives so that they can produce fodder. Fodder needs to produce at industrial scale with machines modern machines, I will tell you what they do in a minute. A human being can do in about 20 years. So absolutely, we have to support smallholder farmers. We bring in smallholder farmers, match them to farmland that's needed to produce the fodder, so that a smallholder farmer then will sit on his farm, increase the density of animals from 3 to about 15. With that 15 and getting fodder at affordable cost, that farmer will produce the milk we require at the right quality, at the right cost. So those are things we need to do. And we need to also get this large scale, the farmers, the civil servants and other business people who own tracts of land to produce forage for farmers. So we need to contract them. So we need to get financing. Once you start getting into industrial scale production of fodder, we need financing. Our industry is underfunded in the billions of dollars. So if you look at the entire agri sector, to modernize it will take billions. This is why I also have issues with studies like this, because the conclusion never goes to what needs to be done properly and therefore budgeted. So all the money will go to roads and whatnot, but then at what point will roads turn into food? Otherwise, you know how much we are spending per year importing food? $3 billion. Milk is now added. Milk is now getting to $100 million a year. So in another 10, 20 years, all our milk will be coming from outside of the country because nobody will be farming at this rate. If at the rate of 3 cows, your son is not inspired to be a dairy farmer. Your daughter will never, in fact, the first thing you tell them is never become a farmer. So where is the transition then? Who will be there to farm for us? So that's your challenge, Simba. We can have a long discussion on this, but I would say the industry people are ready to support.
Yes.
Kenya Dairy Board has done a very good thing to get this study out on time. I like Dairy Board now, they're very bold. Even when there are controversies, they bring it out and they say, guys, come, let's discuss. And what they've said is, next year when we're doing the study, we'll do it a little differently. So again, I see progress. I see the minister, CS, is really the right CS for the industry. He says it as it is. So again, I think we are headed the right direction. But like I told you, we first went back 100 years, and we are coming from there. So the little progress we are making doesn't matter too much unless we address the fundamentals.
Pretty much. Moses Nyabila, thank you very much for taking your time this morning to speak to us here at Metropole Television. And guess what? I'll be calling you soon. There's a lot that we need to table, especially around that study. We just scratched the surface as it is right now.
Absolutely.
All right, we take a short break. Once we come back, Joash is with us. Let's ask that question. So now, last month, we cried when April was just about to adjust the fuel prices in the country. They stayed the same, unrevised. But then Treasury turns around and pays 1.4 billion shillings to these oil dealers in the country for that freeze. So we're asking the question this morning, was that free money or we're going to pay for that? Once Joash comes back here on a Metropole television at Metropole KE across all your social media platforms. I am Ankia Gesimba. More to come once we come back.